The chamber was not designed. It was accumulated. No single species had imagined it. No single civilization could have built it. The Hall of Accord had been under construction for 312 years, passed from one dominant power to the next, each adding what they believed permanence looked like. The result should have been chaos. It was not. The floor was a seamless expanse of black crystalline stone, polished to a depth that reflected not just light, but movement, intention, almost thought. Above it, the ceiling stretched beyond easy comprehension, a vaulted expanse of interlocked materials that did not belong together. Living fiber grown by the Ketheri, metallic lattice from the old Varn empires, suspended liquid glass membranes that shifted opacity based on stellar radiation. At this hour, the light filtering through it was a muted gold. By mid-cycle it would turn white. By the end of session, it would dim into something resembling dusk, regardless of the actual position of the system star. No one had ever agreed to that function. It had simply emerged. Like everything else in the room, 219 species were present. Some occupied physical seating, chairs, platforms, fluid tanks calibrated to pressure and chemistry. Others remained partially phased, their forms visible only as distortions in the air. A cluster of 3 communicated through synchronized vibration across a shared metallic surface. One species existed only as a distributed field, detectable by instruments but given equal representation. Every known mode of existence had, at some point, demanded a place here. And been given one. The central platform stood empty. It was not elevated. Not by design. Over time, the surrounding tiers had lowered themselves, architecturally, politically, symbolically, until the center appeared to rise above them. It was a trick of perspective no one had corrected. No one wanted to. 47 billion active feeds carried the chamber across the known sectors. Not recordings. Not delayed transmissions. Every inhabited system with the capacity to receive was watching. Trade routes paused. Military channels reduced traffic. Civilian networks rerouted bandwidth to prioritize the signal. Even species that did not participate in the Accord monitored it indirectly, through observation posts and intelligence relays. This was not routine. This was convergence. For 180 standard years, one particular civilization had been attempting to reach this room. At first, they had not known it existed. They had transmitted signals into empty space, not expecting answers, only hoping for acknowledgement. When responses came, they were fragmented, inconsistent, occasionally hostile. The early decades had been marked by misinterpretation and loss. Probes destroyed, envoys rejected, communication frameworks incompatible at fundamental levels. They adapted. That was noted early. Not their persistence, many species persisted. Their rate of adjustment. Where most civilizations required generations to reframe their understanding of external intelligence, this one did it in decades. Where others fractured under the strain of first contact, they consolidated. The file grew, then expanded, then required its own classification structure. They were studied, tested, denied, invited back, denied again, measured against criteria that were never fully disclosed. They met them anyway, or something close enough that the distinction became inconvenient. The debates within the Accord had lasted 23 years. Too volatile, too unpredictable, too recent, too fast, too unified under pressure. That last point had been discussed more than once. Eventually, the argument shifted, not to whether they were ready, but to whether continued exclusion created more risk than inclusion. That was when the invitation was sent. Not public, not ceremonial. A single transmission, encoded in standard trade logic, delivered to a coordinate cluster they had only recently gained the ability to monitor. They responded in under 6 minutes. That was also noted. Now they were here. A single representative stood at the edge of the chamber, just outside the central platform. She had arrived 12 minutes earlier. She had not spoken. She had not requested adjustment to environmental conditions, though the chamber default was incompatible with her species' optimal range. A minor accommodation had been made automatically: oxygen ratio, temperature variance, Pressure stabilization. Minimal. Within tolerance. She had accepted it without comment. Her name was recorded across every feed, translated into 6,412 known linguistic structures. Amara Oe. Age, 63 standard years. Origin, third planet of a mid-spectrum star in a relatively unremarkable system. Position, Secretary General. Designation, Primary Diplomatic Authority. She wore no ceremonial markings. No indicators of rank beyond what the file had already established. A dark garment, functional, tailored for comfort rather than display. No visible augmentations. No environmental assistive devices. Her physiology was fully exposed to the room, a decision that had been discussed in pre-session briefings and categorized as either confidence or ignorance. The distinction remained unresolved. She stood still. Not rigid. Not at attention. At rest. As if waiting for something that was not the room's signal to begin. Across the chamber, attention converged. Not gradually. All at once. It was measurable. 219 species, operating on different sensory frameworks, reached the same conclusion within the same fraction of time. This was the moment to observe. The chamber adjusted. Not physically. Behaviorally. Ambient noise, already low, collapsed into absence. Communication between delegations paused mid-exchange. Secondary processes, data logging, internal analysis, predictive modeling, continued, but no longer intruded into the shared space. Even the non-corporeal presences stabilized. It was not silence as most species understood it. It was agreement. Amara Oe stepped forward. The distance to the platform was 6 meters. She crossed it without hesitation. Each step registered across the floor's reflective surface, mirrored beneath her with perfect clarity. The gold light above shifted slightly as she moved, recalibrating around her position, as if the chamber itself were adjusting focus. No one interrupted. No one signaled. No formal introduction was made. There had been discussions about ceremony, whether a species entering the accord for the first time should be received with structured acknowledgement. Those discussions had not produced consensus. So nothing was arranged, which meant this moment, like the room itself, would define its own structure. Amara reached the center. She turned once, slowly, not to display herself, but to see. 219 species. 47 billion observers. 3 centuries of accumulated power. All of it directed, for a brief and measurable interval at one point, at her. She smiled. Not broadly. Not performatively. Something smaller. Something that did not ask for approval. She looked out across the chamber, and for a moment, short enough to be dismissed, long enough to be recorded, she seemed to recognize it. Not as something foreign, but as something inevitable. She opened her mouth to speak. Amara Oe did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The chamber had already given her everything required to be heard. "My name," she said, "is Amara Oe." The translation systems engaged instantly, her words unfolding across thousands of linguistic frameworks in real time. For some species, it arrived as sound. For others, as color shifts, pressure variations, structured data. Meaning, not language, was the priority here. "I am from a planet called Earth." She paused. Not because she had forgotten what came next. Because she was choosing how to say it. That hesitation was recorded on every feed. Later, entire analysis clusters would be built around it. Timing models, intent mapping, psychological inference. In the moment, it simply felt deliberate. "I am here because my people." She stopped. Not mid-thought. Midward. Her body shifted slightly to the left. It was subtle. So small that for most species, it did not register as a problem. A redistribution of weight. A correction of posture. Except it did not correct. The shift continued. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough to be wrong. Her shoulder dipped. Her head followed a fraction too late, as though the coordination between systems had desynchronized. There was a space, less than a second, where the room did not understand what it was seeing. Then she collapsed. No sound preceded it. No visible impact. One moment she was standing in the center of the most powerful room in the known galaxy. The next, she was on the floor. The reflection caught it first. Her body, mirrored perfectly in the black crystalline surface, folding in on itself before the actual movement registered above it. For a fraction of time, there were two images, the fall and the recognition of the fall. Then they aligned. Silence held. Not the controlled silence from before. Something different. A gap. 2 seconds. Measured later by 12 independent systems, all agreeing within a margin of error so small it was statistically irrelevant. 2 seconds in which no one moved. 2 seconds in which every process in the chamber, biological, mechanical, computational, shifted from observation to interpretation and had not yet reached response. It stretched. For the species that experience time in elongated frames, it was an event with structure. For those who processed instantaneously, it was an anomaly, a delay that should not exist. For humans watching across 47 billion screens, it became something else entirely. A memory. Then everything happened at once. Medical teams deployed from 3 directions, not because they had coordinated, but because all 3 had calculated identical response vectors. Atmospheric composition shifted slightly as emergency protocols activated. Scanning arrays, some visible, most not, began mapping her condition at multiple levels: chemical, neurological, structural. Delegates rose, recoiled, signaled, broadcast. The chamber, which had taken centuries to assemble into coherence, fractured into motion. Amara Oei lay at the center of it. Her eyes were open. That detail propagated quickly. Across feeds, across translations, across interpretations, eyes open. It mattered. There was an instinct, shared across more species than anyone had expected, to look at the eyes first. They were not tracking movement, not focusing, not responding. They were fixed on the ceiling, the gold light filtering through layered materials that had taken 3 centuries to assemble. Then, gradually, even that fixed point disappeared. Her gaze did not shift. It emptied. A human medic reached her first. He dropped to his knees beside her, hands already moving, scanning device activated, voice issuing commands that the chamber translated but did not prioritize. His actions were efficient, practiced. They would not matter. A second team arrived. Then a third. Tools deployed. Chemical injections calibrated in microseconds. Neural stabilization attempts initiated. All of it precise. All of it correct. All of it irrelevant. Because whatever had happened had already finished. The translation systems continued running. They did not know to stop. Her last words, incomplete, echoed across networks that had not yet processed the absence of continuation. I am here because my people. The dash where the sentence should have completed became, for a brief moment, the most widely transmitted fragment of language in the galaxy. It repeated. Not intentionally. Not as a loop. As a delay artifact. Feeds buffering, recalibrating, synchronizing. Each repetition slightly out of phase with the last. My people. My people. My people. Across 47 billion screens. Across systems that had never before shared a synchronized moment. The same unfinished line. The same interruption. The same absence. In the upper tiers of the chamber, a representative from a species that processed emotion through harmonic resonance emitted a low, sustained frequency. It was not a signal. It was not communication. It was what their biology did in the presence of loss. Other species did not understand it. They did not need to. They understood the context. A protocol should have triggered. There were procedures for incidents within the chamber: containment, investigation, controlled communication to external systems. Those procedures did not activate immediately, because no one in those first seconds had categorized what had happened. Accident. Failure. Each required a different response. Each implied a different chain of consequence. And the chamber, for all its accumulated knowledge, had never experienced this exact configuration before. A newly admitted species. A first address. A collapse before completion. On live transmission. To the entire galaxy. A delegate from the HFY Empire stepped forward. He had been closest to the platform when Amara arrived. Protocol dictated that he remain in position until the session formally began. Protocol no longer applied. His movement was controlled, measured. His expression, translated into multiple interpretive frameworks, registered as concern. He raised his hands slightly, palms outward. A gesture his species used to indicate non-hostility. He spoke. His words were immediate, structured, appropriate. Medical assistance is being provided. The Accord will. He stopped. Not because he had nothing to say. Because no one was listening to him. Attention had already shifted. Not to the medical teams. Not to the procedural response. But to something else. Something less obvious. Across the chamber, in scattered positions, individuals began to notice details that did not align. Small things. Timing discrepancies. Reactions that were almost correct, but not quite. The kind of things that did not matter, until they did. High above the main floor, in the observer gallery, a figure remained seated. He had not moved during the 2 seconds. He had not moved when the chamber erupted into motion. He was watching. Not the medical teams. Not the fallen figure. Something else. His gaze tracked across the delegates, moving from one to another with slow, deliberate precision. He was not looking for panic. He was looking for absence of it. He found it. And when he did not react. He reached for his recording device instead. Because in a room where everything had just changed, there was something that had not changed at all. And that was the part that mattered. His name was Varen Tao. Observer designation, Kathari Intelligence Corps. Tenure, 87 standard years. Primary function, pattern recognition across non-aligned species behavior. He did not stand. He did not signal. He did not participate in the immediate response. Because his role, by design, began where everyone else's ended. In the 2 seconds when the chamber had not yet decided what it was seeing, he had already started recording. Now, as movement filled the room, he replayed those 2 seconds. Not the whole event. Just the gap. He slowed it. Segmented it. Layered sensor overlays across visual memory. Every species in the chamber had reacted within expected parameters. Delay. Action. All within tolerance. Except one. Varen adjusted the angle of the playback. Focused on the HFY delegate. Savrak. Height, 2.3 meters. Physiology, semi-rigid skeletal structure with adaptive surface pigmentation. Role, ceremonial liaison for new member induction. He had been positioned closest to Amara Oae when she arrived. He had delivered the greeting protocol. He had remained within 5 meters of her position. Varen isolated his frame during the 2-second gap. Frame 1. Neutral observation. Frame 2. Shift in posture. Frame 3. Expression change. He paused. Reversed. Played it again. The chamber, in those 2 seconds, had not yet understood. Savrak had. That was the first inconsistency. The second was smaller. More subtle. Savrak did not move toward her. Not immediately. Every species had a version of emergency response instinct. Even those without biological urgency displayed a structural equivalent. Movement toward the anomaly. Assessment. Intervention. Savrak did not initiate any of those. He waited. Not long. But long enough. 0.8 seconds. Measured. Verified. Then he moved. And when he moved, he performed concern. Varen did not use that term lightly. He had spent decades mapping emotional expression across species that did not share biology, language, or cognition. There were constants. Not in the emotions themselves, but in the transitions between them. Shock did not become concern instantly. There was always a phase change. A gap. A recalibration. Savrak's transition had no gap. It was immediate. Complete. Correct. Too correct. Varen marked the timestamp. Then he looked away from the playback. Not because he had finished. Because he understood enough to begin thinking. Below him, the chamber was stabilizing into structured chaos. Medical teams had established perimeter control around Amara Oae's body. Environmental systems recalibrated to neutral settings. Delegates were being guided, subtly, but firmly back into their designated zones. Order, or something resembling it, was returning. The feeds, however, were still live. 47 billion screens. No delay. No filter. The galaxy was watching this unfold in real time. That changed everything. Varen knew the Accord's protocols for internal incidents. They were designed for containment, control of information, stage disclosure. None of that was possible now. Whatever this was, it was already public. He opened a new record. Not a formal report. Not yet. A working file. Unstructured. He typed one line. Event classification, unresolved. Then he added a second. Primary anomaly, HFY delegate response time and expression transition. He paused. Considered. Then added a third. Probability of natural cause, decreasing. He stopped typing. Not because he was uncertain. Because he needed more data before committing to direction. He returned to the playback. Not of Savrak. Of Amara Oe. Her movement. Her posture. The moment before the collapse. He slowed it to 0.25 speed. Her balance shift. Left side. Shoulder drop. Micro delay in muscular response. Not external force. Internal failure. He overlaid known biological models for her species. Circulatory disruption. Neural interruption. Toxin response. The pattern matched one of them. Too well. He ran a quick cross-reference. Human physiology database. Restricted but not inaccessible. He had clearance. Fast-acting systemic toxins. Delivery methods. Latency windows. Detection probability. A list populated. He scanned it. Eliminated variables. Focused on one category. Aerosolized compounds. Delivered through respiratory intake. Activation window, 2 to 4 minutes. Detection, minimal to none with standard scanning. He stopped. Not because the data was incomplete. Because it aligned too cleanly. He looked back down at the chamber. At Savrak, who was now positioned at the edge of the medical perimeter. Speaking to another delegate. His body language remained consistent. Concern. Measured distress. Appropriate engagement. Perfect. Varen closed the playback. He did not need to see it again. He had seen enough. The question was no longer what had happened. The question was whether anyone else had seen it. He scanned the chamber. Not visually. Pattern-wise. Were there other observers? Other species whose role was not reaction, but analysis? There were always a few. He identified 3. None of them were looking at Savrak. They were focused on the medical teams. On Amara Oe. On the visible event. Not the hidden one. Or not good. Depending on what this meant. Varen leaned back in his seat. For the first time since the collapse, he allowed himself a longer thought. Not about the HFY. Not about Savrak. About humans. He had read their file. Everyone in his position had. It was required. Most species files followed predictable patterns. Development. Expansion. Stabilization. Humans did not. Their file had too many deviations. Too many accelerated transitions. Too many instances where expected collapse had not occurred. He remembered one section in particular. Flagged by multiple analysts. Group cohesion under external threat, unusually high. At the time, it had been categorized as an interesting anomaly. Worth monitoring. He looked down at the chamber again. At Amara Oe's body. At the HFY delegate performing concern. At 47 billion screens carrying this moment across the galaxy. And he thought, monitoring may not be the correct category. He opened a second file. This one formal. Priority tag high. He began typing. Below him, Dale Wren, the human attaché, stood 6 meters from where Amara had fallen. He had not moved since the medical teams arrived. Not because he was frozen. Because he had already moved. In the first second. Before conscious thought. He had taken one step forward. Then stopped. Now he stood still. Watching. Not the medical teams. Not the delegates. The HFY. Specifically Savrak. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Long enough. Savrak's expression did not change. It did not need to. Dale looked at him for another moment. Then he reached into his pocket, removed his communicator, opened a secure channel. Encryption, military grade. Pre-authorized. He did not hesitate. He typed 11 words. Read them once. So, the message transmitted instantly. No delay. No confirmation requested. He closed the communicator, put it back in his pocket, and returned his attention to the chamber. His face did not change. Not grief. Not shock. Something else. Quieter. More stable. The kind of expression that did not belong in this moment. Unless the moment had already been understood. High above, Varental finished his first report. It was shorter than standard. 3 pages. Mostly data. Minimal interpretation. He reread the final line before sending it. The event in the Accord chamber may not be an isolated incident. Recommend continuous observation of human response patterns. Immediate classification upgrade advised. He paused. Then added one more sentence. Not standard. Not required. But accurate. I do not believe the primary consequence of this event will occur here. He sent the report. Closed the file. And for the first time since the collapse, he stopped analyzing and started waiting, because whatever this was, it had already moved beyond the chamber. The Fkai Empire had a word for this. Kethril. The closest translation in standard trade language was diplomatic correction. It was not considered hostile. It was considered necessary. When a newly admitted species entered the Accord with too much momentum, too much cohesion, too much unpredictability, the balance shifted. The older powers did not allow imbalance to persist. They adjusted it. Carefully. Quietly. Without escalation. Kethril had been performed 17 times in the last 4 centuries. Every case followed a similar pattern. A representative, usually symbolic, usually central, was removed. Not publicly. Not violently. Cleanly. Then came the response. Phase 1, grief. Phase 2, outrage. Phase 3, formal complaint. Phase 4, procedural negotiation. Phase 5, acceptance. It was not written as doctrine. It did not need to be. It was simply how things resolved. The newer species would learn. The older ones would remain in place. Stability preserved. Efficiency maintained. No wars. No disruption to trade. No unnecessary attention. The galaxy preferred it this way. Savrak submitted his preliminary report 6 hours after the incident. He did not rush it. Precision mattered more than speed. The document was concise, objective, structured according to Fkai intelligence protocol. Operation status, successful. Target, neutralized. Detection risk, minimal. Accord response, within expected parameters. He paused before completing the final section. Projected outcome. He filled it in without hesitation. Human delegation likely to enter standard grievance cycle within 24 to 72 hours. He added a note. Recommend initiation of condolence protocol within 18 hours to establish narrative framing. 7 paragraphs. They had a template. They always had a template. He began adapting it. In the Accord chamber, the emergency session continued. Not because it was effective. Because it was required. Delegates spoke in sequence. Each expression of concern calibrated to their species' cultural norms. Some used long-form harmonic resonance. Others transmitted compressed data statements. A few relied on visual symbolism, color changes, posture adjustments, light patterns. The content was consistent, tragic, unfortunate, unexpected. Calls for investigation. Calls for restraint. Calls for patience. Procedural motions followed. Requests for subcommittees. Debates over jurisdiction. Arguments about who had authority to classify the event. The chamber, which had collapsed into chaos, reassembled itself into process. This was its function. To absorb disruption. To convert it into structure. To make it manageable. Varental observed all of it. Not because it was useful. Because it was predictable. He had seen this pattern before. Different species. Different incidents. Same structure. The system protecting itself. He opened a secondary feed. Human communications. Public channels only. Internal systems remained encrypted. What he saw did not match expectation. There was no surge, no broadcast outrage, no fragmented messaging, no visible attempt to control narrative. Instead, the same footage. Every channel, every network. Amara Oe walking across the chamber. The gold light, the reflection on the black floor. Her smile, her voice. My name is Amara Oe. I am from a planet called Earth. The interruption, the fall, reset. Fin. Billions of viewers. No commentary, no analysis, no debate, just repetition. Varen watched for 12 minutes. It did not change. He ran a quick comparative model. Previous species responses to leadership loss. Data sets populated quickly. He compared them. None matched. Not even close. He added a note to his file. Human public response, non-standard. No evidence of fragmentation or emotional broadcast behavior. He paused, then added, possible interpretation, controlled suppression. He did not believe that. Not fully, but it fit the model better than anything else. For now. On Earth, the time difference placed the event in early morning. Cities were waking, or trying to. In Lagos, Chioma Oe sat on the edge of her bed, her phone in her hand. It had not stopped vibrating for 12 minutes. She had read the first message. Then the second. She did not remember the third. The feed was already open. Her mother, on screen. Walking. Always walking. Never finishing the sentence. Chioma watched it once. Then again. Then she placed the phone face down beside her. The room was quiet. Outside, the city was not. Sound built slowly. Engines. Voices. Movement. The beginning of a day that had not yet decided what it was. She did not cry. Not yet. There was a space. Between knowing and feeling. She was inside it. She sat there for a long time. Then she stood up. Walked to her desk. Picked up a piece of her structural model. And continued working. Because her hands needed something to do. Back in the Accord, the FKI condolence message was transmitted. Exactly 18 hours after the incident. 7 paragraphs. Structured. Balanced. Impeccably neutral. It expressed regret, solidarity, commitment to investigation, hope for continued cooperation. It named Amara Oe. It acknowledged her importance. It avoided implication. It always avoided implication. The message was received by the human delegation. No response. Savrak reviewed the transmission confirmation. Everything was proceeding within expectation. He updated his internal projection timeline. Grievance submission, pending. Human response window, narrowing. He allowed himself a brief recalibration of posture. Not relaxation. Something adjacent. Efficiency had been achieved. The system would correct itself. It always did. 3 days passed. The Accord continued its sessions. Committees formed. Reports drafted. Investigations proposed. None concluded. Because there was nothing to conclude. Not officially. Varental did not sleep during those 3 days. Not continuously. In intervals. His attention remained fixed on one dataset. Human communications. At hour 4, there had been a spike. Encrypted traffic increased by 800%. At hour 6, it stopped. Completely. Every channel. Every node. Every frequency. Silence. Total. Simultaneous. Varen replayed the data. Twice. 3 times. There was no degradation curve. No tapering. No staggered shutdown. It was not failure. It was execution. He cross-referenced known communication blackout patterns. Emergency containment. System collapse. External interference. None matched. He added a new line to his report. Human communication cessation. Deliberate, synchronized, total. He stared at it. Then added, this is not grief behavior. In the FKI capital, the silence was noted, not escalated. A xenopsychology team produced a brief analysis. 6 pages. Well reasoned. Data supported. Conclusion. Collective mourning response in highly social species. Temporary withdrawal from external interaction expected. Recovery within standard timeline. The report was distributed. Accepted. Filed. Varental read it. He closed it. He did not add a comment, because he had already written something similar years ago about another species. He had been wrong then. He recognized the pattern. He was not going to repeat it. 72 hours after Amara Oe collapsed in the chamber, the galaxy had reached consensus. Not officially, but functionally. This would resolve. It would take time. It would require process. But it would resolve. It always did. At 9:14 Conclave Standard Time, every human communication channel in the galaxy opened. Simultaneously. Every frequency. Every node. Every system. One transmission. Broadcast to all recipients. No encryption. No framing. No introduction. Just sound. Amara Oe's voice. Precise. My name is Amara Oe. I am from a planet called Earth, and I am here because my people refused. The sentence played. Fully. No interruption. No collapse. No distortion. The complete recording. Followed by silence. Real silence. The kind that exists when a system has nothing left to say. The transmission ended. All human channels closed again. Simultaneously. Across the galaxy, analysis began. Interpretations formed. Theories generated. Varental did not analyze it. He did not need to. He had heard something in that transmission. Not in the words. In the structure. The shape of it. He had encountered it before. In predator species. At the moment they stopped calculating and began. He opened a new report. And for the first time in his career, he marked it. Priority 1. The silence did not feel empty. That was the first mistake. Across the Accord, across intelligence offices, across species that had spent centuries studying behavior, silence was categorized as absence. No signals. No data. No action. The pause. A gap. A phase between events. This silence was not a gap. It had structure. Varental saw it first. Not because he was faster. Because he was looking for something that should not exist. He pulled 14 days of human vessel movement data. Commercial traffic. Diplomatic transports. Survey ships. Unremarkable. Every entry, individually, made sense. Minor course corrections. Small velocity changes. Standard deviations within acceptable range. Nothing that triggered automated flags. That was why no one had noticed. Varen mapped them together. All of them. Across a 9 light-year radius centered on the Accord. He adjusted the scale. Removed non-human traffic. Filtered noise. What remained did not look random. It looked arranged. 17 vessels altered course by less than 2 degrees. Insignificant. 32 adjusted speed by under 3%. Normal. 9 changed docking schedules within standard variants. Routine. Individually. Meaningless. Together. Directional. Every ship had shifted. Not toward a central point. Not away from one. Into alignment. Not formation. Not clustering. Something else. A configuration. Varen did not have a term for it. He did not have a model. He stared at the projection for a long time. Then he said out loud, "This is deliberate." Elsewhere, no one said that. In the Sky capital, the silence had been categorized. Grief response. Communal withdrawal. Predictable. Manageable. The advisory council moved on to other matters. Trade adjustments. Internal policy. The condolence response had been sent. No reply. This was within tolerance. The process would continue. It always did. On Earth, there was no silence. That was the second mistake. Public networks were active. Fully. Every channel. Every screen. Every system capable of broadcast. They carried one thing. The same footage. Unedited. Unexplained. Uninterrupted. Amara Oe walking across the chamber. The gold light. The reflection. Her voice. My name is Amara Oe. The fall. Reset. Again. And again. And again. People watched. Billions of them. Not speaking. Not arguing. Not reacting the way humans were known to react. No fragmentation. No competing narratives. No visible disagreement. Just attention. Sustained. Focused. Directed. Chioma Oei sat at her desk. The model in front of her had taken 6 months to build. A structural system. Load-bearing balance across asymmetrical supports. She adjusted one piece. Then another. The footage played behind her. She did not look at it. Not anymore. She knew it. Every frame. Every movement. The exact moment her mother's weight shifted. The delay. The fall. She placed another component into position. Her hands were steady. She was not thinking about the model. She was thinking about timing. Back in the Accord, Varen filed his second Priority 1 report. This one longer. Less certain. More urgent. Human vessel movement indicates coordinated positional adjustment over multi-day window. He attached the map. He highlighted the pattern. He added, no known strategic model matches this configuration. He hesitated, then wrote, this is not passive behavior. The report was received, flagged, reviewed, deferred, because it did not fit expectation. A FKI intelligence officer named Reth noticed the communication spike. Hour 4. 800% increase. Nothing. Total silence. He flagged it. Submitted the report. His supervisor read it. Reviewed the xenopsychology assessment. Matched the pattern. Filed it under behavioral response. No escalation. Reth went to lunch. Varen did not. He expanded the dataset. Pulled 30 days. Then 60. Then 100. The pattern deepened. It had not started after the incident. It had started before. Subtle. Distributed. Hidden inside noise. He traced the earliest shift. Day -12. Before Amara Oi entered the chamber. Before the collapse. Before the transmission. Before everything. He leaned back in his seat. Not in surprise. In confirmation. This was planned. The thought settled. Not dramatic. Not shocking. Inevitable. Below him, the Accord continued to function. Committees. Debates. Procedural motions. Species arguing about jurisdiction and terminology. The structure held. Because no one had yet realized. They were no longer inside the event. They were behind it. 72 hours had passed. The silence had closed. The transmission had played. The channels had shut again. And now, the movement began. Not visibly. Not immediately. But across systems. Coordinates updated. Routes recalculated. Access points synchronized. Authorization chains activated. On a carrier in low orbit above Earth. Admiral Isef Crane stood in a room without windows. The display in front of him showed the same map Varen had built. But complete. Not inferred. Confirmed. Every vessel. Every position. Every vector. Commander Ria N stood behind him. How long? She asked. Crane did not turn. Until they understand what they're looking at, he said. And then, he adjusted one parameter. A small shift. One piece locking into place. Then it won't matter. She watched the display. The movement was slow. Careful. Unforced. Like something assembling itself without urgency. What is it? She asked. Crane paused. Not because he didn't know. Because the answer required precision. It's a board, he said. Back in the Accord. Varen stared at the same pattern. Incomplete. But enough. He opened a new report. Marked it Priority 1 again. Third time in 4 days. He had never done that before. He wrote, human activity cannot be explained by grief models. He added, current behavior indicates pre-coordinated strategic positioning. Then he stopped. Because the next sentence, he was not certain how to phrase. He looked at the map again. At the pieces. At their positions. At the space between them. He wrote, I do not believe we are observing a reaction. He paused. Then finished it. I believe we are observing the final stage of a preparation already completed. He sent the report. It was not deferred. Across the Accord, attention shifted. Not fully. Not immediately. But enough. Something had changed. No one knew what it was yet. But the silence was no longer being interpreted as absence. It was being understood as control. The first ships did not arrive as a fleet. That was the third mistake. Across the Accord, across every military doctrine ever written, power announced itself in scale. Mass. Numbers. Overwhelming presence. This did not. 7 ships exited faster than light travel at the edge of HFY-controlled space. No formation. No signal. No deviation. They simply appeared and continued moving. The HFY border station detected them immediately. Standard protocol initiated. Identification request transmitted. Unregistered vessels, you are entering restricted HFY Imperial territory. State designation and intent. No response. The ships continued. A second transmission. More direct. More formal. Reduce speed and prepare for inspection. Failure to comply will be considered an act of aggression. No response. Commander Thale of the Border Fleet observed the approach from her command vessel. 18 years in position. 12 recorded incidents. None like this. She adjusted the sensor resolution. Focused on the lead ship. No visible weapon systems. No external markings indicating military classification. Velocity, constant. Course, direct. They're not accelerating, her tactical officer said. Thale nodded. They're not slowing either. Protocol required escalation. She initiated blockade formation. 22 ships deployed. Standard configuration. A wall. Positioned directly across the incoming vector. Third transmission. Final warning. This is your last directive. Stop immediately or be engaged. The 7 ships did not stop. They did not change course. They did not acknowledge the transmission. They kept coming. There was a moment, not recorded in official logs. Not measurable, but present, where the decision existed. Engage. Or assume error. Thale chose engagement. Fire a disabling shot, she ordered. Target the lead vessel's propulsion. The beam fired. Precise. Calibrated. Non-lethal. It struck the lead ship. The ship did not slow. Sensor readings fluctuated. Not damage. Absorption. Redirection. The beam dissipated across its surface as though it had been expected. Fire again. 3 beams. Different frequencies. Different angles. All connected. All failed. The ships crossed the blockade line. And then, everything changed. Not with an explosion. Not with escalation. With movement. The 7 ships shifted. Not randomly. Not evasively. They rotated. The damaged vessel, if it could be called damaged, moved inward. The others adjusted around it. Not protecting. Not shielding. Rebalancing. The formation did not break. It evolved. Thale issued new commands. Target the central vessel. Disrupt command structure. HFY doctrine was clear. Remove coordination. Win the engagement. 3 human ships responded. Not defensively. Not by retreating. They accelerated. Directly toward the attacking vessels. No evasive maneuvers. No defensive patterns. Just forward motion. The HFY gunners hesitated. For seconds. In combat analysis, for seconds is nothing. In this moment, it was everything. The human ships closed distance. Weapons deployed. Not visible. Not announced. 2 HFY ships ceased functioning. Instantly. No explosion. No debris. Systems offline. Drifting. Thale recalibrated. Adjusted targeting protocols. Issued new commands. Engage all vessels. Full suppression. The battle began. It lasted 9 hours. That was the 4th mistake. By every known model, this engagement should have ended in under 30 minutes. 7 ships. Against 22. Outcome predictable. It was not. Varen Tal received fragments of the battle in real time. Sensor data. Transmission logs. Partial telemetry. Enough. He began writing before it was over. Primary observation: human vessels do not prioritize self-preservation. He underlined it, then wrote it again. Below, the battle unfolded. The HFY attempted standard tactics. Divide the formation. Isolate targets. Force retreat. None worked. Each time a ship was damaged, it moved inward. Each time an opening appeared, another ship filled it. There was no hesitation, no retreat, no recalculation delay. The formation adapted continuously, without pause. By hour 3, the HFY had lost 5 ships. Humans, none. By hour 6, 9 HFY ships destroyed. 1 human ship lost. Fail requested reinforcements. A second fleet arrived at hour 7. Twice the size. The humans did not retreat. They adjusted. Varen wrote. They are not reacting to the battle. They are executing through it. The distinction mattered, because reaction implies uncertainty. Execution does not. At hour 8, Thale opened a direct channel. Unidentified vessels. This is Commander Thale. State your command authority. A response came. Immediate. Crane. One word. Alright. No title. Commander Crane, ceasefire requested. State your terms. Not long. Keep firing, the voice said. Or stop. There is no third option. The channel closed. Thale did not speak. She understood. This was not negotiation. At hour 9, her fleet was no longer a fleet. 14 ships destroyed. 19 disabled. Formation gone. Command structure fractured. She transmitted surrender. Ceasefire request. All frequencies. All channels. No response. The 7 ships continued. They did not slow. They did not engage further. They passed through the remains of the fleet, as if it no longer existed. Because for them, it didn't. Varen finished his report. They do not fight to survive. They fight to accomplish. He added one more line. And they behave as though the outcome has already been decided. On the Johannesburg, Admiral Crane read the report. Commander Rhea stood beside him. Casualties? She asked. 3 ships, he said. Full loss on 1. Partial evacuation on 2. And them? 14 destroyed. 19 disabled. She was silent. Not because of victory. Because of weight. Crane placed the report down. The next phase begins in 6 hours, he said. What changes? She asked. Crane looked at the display. At the pieces. At their positions. Nothing, he said. Everything already has. The reports began to change. Not in content. In tone. For the first 4 days, every intelligence document followed the same structure. Event summary. Tactical analysis. Loss assessment. Projection. Structured. Contained. By day 5, that structure began to fail. Varental noticed it in his own writing first. His reports were getting longer. Then shorter. Then different. The data still mattered. But it was no longer the center. Because the data did not explain the behavior. He opened his latest report. 7 pages. 6 of them were numbers. Positions. Vectors. Loss ratios. Infrastructure collapse timelines. The 7th page had no data. He had written a title, then removed it, then written it again. Observations. He stared at the word for a long time, then began. Every species I have studied uses force as expression. He paused, adjusted the phrasing, continued. We fight to acquire. We fight to defend. We fight to resolve imbalance. In every case, force is a means to an end that is external to the act itself. He stopped typing, looked out across the chamber. The accord was still functioning. Sessions ongoing. Delegates speaking. Processes continuing. Nothing had collapsed. That was the problem. He continued writing. Humanity is not using force in this way. He let that line sit. Then expanded. They are not attempting to take territory. They are not expanding influence in a recognizable pattern. They are not demonstrating power for its own sake. There are no victory statements. No claims of dominance. No symbolic gestures of conquest. He reviewed the line. It was accurate. That made it worse. Because if none of those were true, then what was this? He thought about the sequence, the silence, the positioning, the engagement, the aftermath. He thought about what came after the battle. No occupation, no expansion, no territorial claim. Instead, systems went dark, not destroyed, disabled. Weapons depots collapsed, not exploded, rendered unusable. Warships intercepted, not eliminated, converted. He had seen the footage. 3 human vessels intercepting a HFY cruiser. The process had taken 4 hours. First, disable propulsion. Remove weapon systems. Not violently. Precisely. Reconfigure navigation. Limit range. Restrict capacity. When the humans left, the ship remained. Functional. Harmless. It could carry. It could move. It could not fight. Varen wrote. They are not destroying capability. They are redefining it. He stopped. Because that was closer, but still not correct. He leaned back, closed his eyes. Not in rest. In reconstruction. He thought about something else. Amara, not the event. The person. Her speeches. Her patterns. There had been a consistency in them. A theme. Not dominance. Not expansion. Refusal. He opened another file. Her last transmission. The complete one. My name is Amara Oa. I am from a planet called Earth, and I am here because my people refused. Refused what? The file had interpretations. Many. None complete. He went back to his report. Added a line. This is not war. He paused. Then corrected it. This is not what we categorize as war. Better. More precise. He continued. War, in all known forms, is a process of forcing change through destruction or threat of destruction. What we are observing is not forcing change. It is constructing it. He stopped. Read the sentence again. Constructing. The word settled. He thought about the vessel movements, the alignment, the positioning. He thought about the sequence of actions, the order, the restraint. He thought about the way nothing was wasted. No excess. No escalation beyond requirement. Everything measured. Place. Like components. He opened a new line and wrote, I believe the correct term is architecture. He stared at it. Architecture. Not destruction. Not chaos. Design. Structure. Intent. He continued. Humanity is not reacting to loss. They are building something from it. Across the accord, other reports were reaching similar edges. Not the same conclusion, but the same confusion. Language failing. Because the existing models did not include this. In the HFY capital, the Emperor's Council was no longer calm. Relay stations had gone dark. Not destroyed. Disconnected. Supply routes failed. Not attacked. Inaccessible. Communication arrays. Silent. But no human ships visible. No active engagement. Just absence. Growing. Cyrus, senior intelligence advisor, sat in the chamber and listened to the others argue. Louder now. Less controlled. She did not speak. She had seen the pattern earlier. She had filed the request. It had not been acted on. But the pattern was everywhere. She had read Varen's report. The word. Architecture. She did not reject it. She thought about something else. The phrase. We remember. It had spread across human networks. Not directed. Not organized. Repeated. Not as a slogan. Not as a command. As a statement. She understood something then. Not fully. But enough. Thought. Memory is not passive for them. She did not say it out loud. There was no one in the room who would understand it correctly. Back in the Accord, Varen finished his report. He added one final section. Not required. Not standard. But necessary. Conclusion. He paused. Because conclusions implied certainty. He did not have certainty. He had recognition. He wrote anyway. Grief, in most species, is a period of dysfunction followed by adaptation. He continued. In humans, it appears that grief can become something else. He stopped, considered the wording, then finished it. Given sufficient time, control, and collective alignment, human grief transitions from emotional state to structural process. He looked at the sentence, then reduced it, simplified it, made it clearer. Grief becomes architecture. He sent the report. Across the galaxy, it was read, not fully understood, but felt, because for the first time, the fear was not about what humans were doing. It was about what they were becoming. For months later, the chamber was full again. The Hall of Accord had not changed. Not visibly. The same black crystalline floor. The same impossible ceiling. The same convergence of forms, matter, and intent. But the room felt different. Not because of what had been added. Because of what had been left. The platform remained. And beside it, a chair. It had been placed there after the incident. Covered in black. Untouched. Unmoved. 3 days before the session, a junior facilities worker had been sent to reset the platform. Standard procedure. Clear the space. Prepare for the next address. He had reached the chair, placed his hands on it, and stopped. Later when asked why, he did not have an answer. It didn't feel like it should be moved, he said. The request for clarification moved through channels. Facilities. Administration. Session planning. Executive office. 3 days of internal routing. The response, when it came, was short. Leave it. So they did. The cloth was removed. The chair remained. Polished. Unoccupied. The name engraved on the back. In 6 languages. Amaroe. Secretary General. The session began. 219 species. Same as before. Some had new representatives. Some had fewer. The HFY delegation. For members now. Not 12. No ceremonial robes. No visible status markings. They entered quietly. Sat without speaking. Did not look toward the center. Across the chamber, other species adjusted. The ones listed under protected. Still. Observing. The ones under observed. Careful. Measured. No one spoke casually. No one performed. The structure of the room remained. The behavior inside it had changed. The human delegation entered last. Not as a display. Not delayed. But they did not fill the row. 5 individuals. At the front, a man in a plain dark uniform. No decoration. No visible rank. He moved without hesitation. Without pause. He did not look at the chair. He did not need to. He sat one position to its left. Varen Tal watched from the observer gallery. He had requested this session be recorded at full resolution. Every layer. Every signal. Every shift. Not because he expected something dramatic. Because he had learned that nothing about this process was dramatic. It was precise. The session chair, Sorval, opened proceedings. 30 years in position. Hundreds of sessions. His voice carried the same structure it always had. Formal. Measured. Balanced. He spoke of continuity. Of stability. Of the need for structure. Then he paused. Not long. Just enough to acknowledge what everyone in the room already knew. This was not a continuation. He turned toward the human delegation. Earth has requested to present a document to the Accord, he said. No elaboration. No framing. He gestured. The man stood. My name is Isef Crane, he said. No amplification. No rhetorical shaping. I'm here on behalf of Earth. We have a document to table. He sat down. The document distributed. 11 pages. The first 9. Consequences. Not laws. Not frameworks. Not proposals. Plain language. If a member species engages in assassination of a representative, these actions will follow. If a member suppresses another through coercion, these actions will follow. If a dominant power exerts control over a smaller species, these actions will follow. Each section, specific, measured, complete, not suggestions, not negotiable, defined. The chamber read in silence. Varen read it once. Then again. The structure was unmistakable. Not reactive. Designed. Built. The 10th page. A single paragraph. Earth commits to non-aggression toward all members not subject to consequence protocols. Earth commits to enforcement only when required. Earth commits to withdrawal upon completion. One line. We are not here to run the galaxy. We are here to ensure no one else does. Page 11. Completely. No header. No mark. Just space. The chamber reacted. Not loudly, but fully. Questions. Concerns. Interpretations. Too much authority. Not enough structure. Unclear boundaries. Debate. The system trying to process something that had already been decided. Crane did not respond. He did not interrupt. He did not engage. He waited. When the noise reduced, the vote was called. Proof. Or reject. The tally appeared. 201. Yes. Crane looked at the abstentions. He reached into his pocket. Took out a card. Wrote something. Handed it to his aide. The aide did not look at it. Later, it would be recorded. 18 names. And one word beneath them. Noted. The session ended. Delegations exited. Some spoke quietly. Some did not speak at all. The FKI left first. They did not look back. Varen came down from the gallery. He had tried, for months, to request an audience. Denied. Deferred. Crane stood alone by a window. Varen approached. Stopped beside him. You're the Kathari observer, Crane said. Yes. I read your reports. All of them. The useful ones. Varen waited. Then asked the question he had been carrying. What do humans want now? Crane did not answer immediately. Not thinking. Deciding. We go home, he said. We remember. Varen waited. There was nothing else. For now, he asked. Crane looked at him. For the first time. Directly. For now. He picked up his coat. Walked away. Did not look back. Varen stood there. Watching the chamber empty. The chair remained. Unoccupied. Unmoved. He thought about the word. Architecture. He thought about grief. About memory. About what had been built. Not destroyed. Built. He did not write a report. Not this time. He opened his private journal instead. Wrote one line. The sentence was never meant to be finished. Earth. In Lagos. Chioma Oei sat at her desk. The model in front of her was complete. Not a bridge. Something else. A structure that held 2 points together. So they could not be pulled apart. She looked at it for a long time. Then closed the case. The city moved. Normal, she whispered. Not to anyone. We remember. And that was enough. In the most beautiful room that had ever existed. A chair sat empty. And for the first time in its long history, the galaxy understood what it meant. When a species did not forget. And did not forgive. But built. Silently. Until there was nothing left. To correct.